What if we could keep children safer by never letting them know who their father is, but having their father around? Hear me out. I follow this creator, and she's doing a series called Women Gone Feral, where she's basically observing the behavior of female animals and how crazy they can be in order to protect their species. So the video that I'm referencing is her talking about how female lionesses will protect their cubs by mating with as many male lions as possible during mating season. And because of this, no male lion knows which female lioness he actually got pregnant. So in the event that an aggressive male lion comes to the female lionesses and tries to attack her cubs, he is put off by the fact that one of those cubs might be his, or some of them might be his. As a result, he doesn't attack the cubs. This creator then goes on to say that Plato, the researcher, the philosopher, actually knew about this, and he advocated for this because in matriarchal societies, this is what was happening. For 25,000 years, women were mating with as many men as possible and having offspring, and the offspring would be raised collectively in the community without belonging to a certain man because he's the one who impregnated this woman. And as a result of that, all the children were treated better by the men in the community. There is our answer, literally right there. And then you look at religion and it does the complete opposite of that. Religion tells you to be a virgin before marriage so that the man that you marry will know for a fact that the children you have for him are his, and therefore they're his property. All right? And when they're his property, now he can abuse them, or he can mistreat them, or he can do whatever he wants because they belong to him. And my mutual Queen Sovereign already made a video talking about the statistics of fathers abusing their children, so I'm not even going to bring that up today. It's been well documented that when men have access to their own children, they will abuse them. Not all, obviously, not all, but most, okay? And that is enough of a reason for us to start to seriously consider the structure of a nuclear family and how beneficial it actually is for the women and children involved, because it's not. It's not. I just think it's very fascinating that when a man knows that these children are his, he will abuse them. But if he doesn't know that those children are his, he will not abuse them because one of them might be his. So they're actually more protective and loving over children that they perceive might be theirs over the children that they know for a fact are actually theirs. And that tells you how selfish men inherently are at their core, which is why if we really want to change things around, if we really want to teach them empathy, if we really want them to be involved in child care, then we can't tell them who their kids are. It's pretty wild that this concept of men having to know who their children are is a result of the patriarchy and capitalism. Why? Because when you're married to a man, then the government has access to your children, and you gotta buy a house, and you gotta be locked into a mortgage, and then you gotta stay living there, and you gotta put your kids in public school, and da-da-da. It's all to involve the government in your family, instead of actually caring about the well-being of the children. And then having healthy men around, because we're never going to get rid of men. I really don't think that we're ever, and that's not my goal. I don't want to get rid of men. I just want them to be safer to be around for women and children. And the fact that they're safer to be around for women and children happens because they don't know which children are theirs is wild to think about. And this is how I know that religion is made up by men, because they say that their God is all-knowing, right? So their God would have known the biology of human nature, and their God would have said, hey, I really care about the kids that you guys are gonna have, so actually you don't need to take a vow with me in order to consummate this marriage or whatever, because you're allowed to have intercourse with whatever men you want as a woman, and then raise the kids in the community. It's like, no, that's too far-fetched for their God, right? Because their God is literally them. And men don't want that. They don't want to not know which child is theirs, because then that means they can't abuse all children anymore. Wild.
I watched the video you are referencing and you jumped to an incorrect conclusion. It has nothing to do with if he doesn't know the children are his, he won't abuse them because they might be his. That contradicts your other point, which is incorrect. That he will abuse his own kids because he sees them as his property. The reason why he won't abuse is because he will fear retaliation from other men who think the kid might be theirs. It doesn't really make sense for her to say that if you don't tell the man that these are your kids that the man wants to protect for them, then how do you think men will be responsible for their kids? Because if we are just living like animals, where you father here, you father there, you father there, there is no need or there is no sense of responsibility for any man to take care of any kids. If anything, because the way animals behave is that if a female animal has some cubs, and then if maybe there's a male there, that male, the female will have to hide that male from the father, because for that male animal to continue maintaining dominance, he can't be challenged by any males. So even his own cubs, they are at risk. They are at risk of being harmed by that male, because they are a threat. Few years, maybe once that animal grows up, might pose as a threat to the male animal. So that's the reason why maybe you find that the male cubs, at some point when they are born or as they grow, they are separated from their male, or they are hidden, or they stay away from the male. The reason is because they might get harmed, because that animal wants to continuously dominate. And if there's another male, even if it's his own cub, animals don't know that. He might harm it. So us saying we shouldn't tell men that they are the kids are theirs. It does not make sense, because men are not gonna provide, men are not gonna protect their kids. If anything, men are gonna harm, because they don't think it's theirs. So if you have those predators that so people might, the world just might turn upside down, because how are you going to prevent inbreeding? How are you going to prevent men from giving kids to their own daughters? How are you going to prevent that? We will just be living like bunch of animals. So her theory does not really make sense. What do you all think? I think I've talked too much. What do you all think in the comment section?
If you get a man drunk enough, he will tell you the truth about anything. So I need to tell you guys the truth that was admitted to me by this man who was drunk like 3 weeks ago, and we were just having a regular conversation. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, because he basically blatantly admitted that the reason why him and so many other men are jealous of women is because they feel like women can control their lust, and they feel like men are controlled by their lust. When he admitted that to me, I was not surprised. I knew this about men, but what was surprising is what clicked in my mind after. And basically what clicked in my mind after is that religion is a lustful man's tool to control women, because women are not controlled by their lustful urges or their sexual desires. And men know this. Deep down inside, they know this. Whether they want to admit it or not, doesn't matter. Men realize that women can control their lust and they can't control their own lust. So what they decided to do is, in order to have a sense of control and power, they decided that it was women's fault that they're so lustful, so it's women who must be controlled. And as someone who used to be in a religious community, in a religious family, and like heavily involved in religion, I can tell you from experience that the more religious a man is, the more lustful he is, typically. Because lustful men need the fear of God in their hearts. They need the fear of punishment. They need the fear of hell and fire in order to not be disgusting animals. They know that their lust is disgusting. They know that their sexual urges are weird. They know this. But instead of reflecting on what they can do to be better and how to express their sexual urges in a healthy, creative way, they've decided that women are the ones to blame, and that in order for them to avoid being controlled by their lust or by their sexual urges, they need to control women. You know, this actually makes a lot of sense when I think about my dad and my upbringing, because my dad was a very controlling, obsessive, religious freak. So I grew up thinking like, oh, he's so devoted, he loves God, this, that. Until I strayed from the religion and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I saw how deeply angry he got about that. And I was like, oh, it was always about control. It was never about you actually fearing God. It was about you fearing loss of control. So using this concept of God, of a male God that's in the sky watching my every move, trying to plant a man in my head permanently to observe my actions and judge me, gave you a sense of control. Me rejecting that and deciding that actually I don't need this invisible man's point of view in my head nonstop in order for me to be a good person, when I realized that about myself, it scared the shit out of him. And it scares the shit out of most of them, which is why the first thing men do when women liberate themselves is take away women's rights. Is try to get them married off because of some religion or some man or some this or some that. It always comes down to women's lives being limited and restricted in order for men to feel some sort of sense of control. I genuinely don't know what it's going to take for these guys to realize that they do have control. The control is just over themselves, not anybody else. You have no control over any other man or woman on this planet, period. You can control yourself though, but that's not enough for them because they don't actually want to control themselves. They don't actually want to take accountability. They don't actually want to improve. They don't even want to understand themselves. They want everybody around them to cater to them and their desires and their needs so that they can feel a little powerful, so that they can feel like they have some sort of control over something instead of just controlling themselves and being better. And I think that's really sad and really pathetic.